I will say, do not let it break you. Honestly, I think the most heartbreaking thing for me as a mentor.
And that achievement was followed by me being named in Forbes 30 Under 30.
I would say think about becoming a mentor. I wasn't a mentee.
You should have this personality, you should like this, you should like that, you should look like this.
Anyone who's listening to this would like to get involved, they should definitely. It really, really changed my career as I knew it. My name is Alia. I am a current PhD student at UCL Institute of Neurology. Previously, I was an accredited nutritionist from King's College London, where I did my undergraduate degree there, and then later pursued my postgrad degree in neuroscience at UCL as well before undertaking a PhD. I am currently a mentor for KCL WiSTEM, and I'm very excited to participate in this interview.
My name's Esme Matthews, and I am a recruitment account manager with GSK through Corn Ferry. My background is that I did a neuroscience bachelor's degree at King's, and I decided to take a step away from science and move into the recruitment consultancy industry. And so I got my first class degree through King's, just off the back of the pandemic. I joined a small consultancy company that was working in life sciences, and then I was headhunted to work through GSK through Corn Ferry, and have been supporting with their recruitment pipelines since then.
My name is Iniolua Biadun. I am a mum. I like to start off with that. My daughter has been one of the biggest lessons of my life. It's been a joy to parent her and just watch a tiny baby grow into a human and just really learn serious life lessons through that. And professionally, I work as a growth product designer. So I lead web performance at Intercom on the design side of things. And prior to that, I was a principal product designer at Norton Antivirus, where much of it was more or less what I do now, but it leaned more into helping us understand the acquisition process for our customers, and that was across 58 markets. I am actually still a lawyer till today, so I don't think you actually stop being a lawyer simply because you're not actively practicing. I actually put my degree to use. So once a year, I do pro bono work for small businesses not being able to access legal help. I'm just going over their contracts and just tying up loose ends with them. And it's such a fun way to also give back and dust off my law degree and use that. So that's me. I've been in the UK for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I lived in South Africa for quite a while.
I'm Leticia. I'm from Brazil. I'm 27 years old. Right now, I'm in the moment of pursuing a business role, but I've been working in companies as such startups, fintechs, and also big companies as Amazon. When I was working with Prime Video as a front-end engineer, I had my studies background as computer engineering. I did a master's in human-computer interaction, which is something I'm really passionate about it. And my aspirations is always to bring the development process, including the customer perspective. We don't build products, technological products, just for gain money, just for business purposes, but we build things to help people outside in this world. So to help them, we need to do the best as we can to not make things hard.
It's been not a very straightforward journey up to a certain point. So I always wanted to become a doctor, and specifically a surgeon, since I was about 5 years old. But I was also very interested in the technical aspect of problem solving. The whole journey started when I did an internship, or I shadowed a surgeon for 3 months in my home country in Greece. And I was then sure that I wanted to do something related to healthcare and just help improve people's lives. But because I was very interested in the technical aspect, I combined the two and went to study biomedical engineering, which combines perfectly engineering and medicine. I've had my whole journey at King's. So
Yes.
I did my undergraduate degree here in biomedical engineering as well as my PhD. But it was actually kind of a luck kind of situation, because I was planning on going to study for a master's degree, and then I was offered this PhD. I was going to go to different university, and I was offered this PhD to continue my project that I was doing in my final year, biomedical engineering, and continue it as a PhD. And I said yes. And after my PhD, followed my job here, and now I'm a lecturer in the Department of Biomedical Engineering.
So my journey was a little bit of a wiggly one, for lack of a better word. I kicked off doing my nutritional science degree at King's and randomly fell into this thing called iGEM, which is the International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. A mouthful, but that very much changed my academic career as I knew it, because I engaged in a 2-year project that completely centered around spinal cord injury with a focus on axons. And that's where I realized I quite liked axons and I wanted to pursue that a little further, which led me to switch from nutrition to neuroscience, and then later decide that actually this is where I'd like to stay, and further pursue my academic career.
The journey, actually, there's a few more zigs and zags in between there. So I got into university quite early, got in at 15, which also just meant that I spent many of my law classes not understanding what was going on. By the second year, I sort of leaned into my creative side as an escape, if you will. And much of that was just sketching dresses, and there was a comic in high school that I was so in love with, like Archie and Veronica, the series. I don't know if it's, yes, exactly. So I really enjoyed just imagining I was a personal designer to Veronica Lodge, for example, and she oftentimes like jetted around the world, so always needing new wardrobe and things like that. So I did a lot of just imagining outfits and sketching those out. So I've always been good at drawing and able to illustrate my thoughts perfectly. And I recall it was towards the end of my second year that a friend had seen one of the sketches, and we typically do end of year faculty dinners across different across the university basically, and she wanted to wear one of those pieces to her faculty dinner, and it's like, I just sketch these things out. I do not have any concept of how to create this clothing. Eventually managed to get a tailor. We got all of that done, and that sort of sparked my journey into fashion design. So while I was a law student, I accidentally started a business, because then after she'd won this garment, orders began to pour in. And so from there, I juggled being a law student and just creating clothes. And when I was done with that, at 21, I graduated and entered a national fashion competition back home in Nigeria, got to dress an A-list actress on a major red carpet event. So that was the point of the competition. This actress had sort of taken a hiatus and was returning to the big screen. And they just called for like designers to create sketches for her. My sketch got selected. I got to create the dress, won the competition, dressed her. It was such a great time, because that also helped me begin to understand that as much as I had now finished studying law, I still had to go to law school for 9 months. However, there was potentially a pathway for me to really lean into my creative side of things. So eventually moved on. I started, like, the business definitely took off once that event was done, and it was a great segue into bridal design for me. So I was in law school and still juggling bridal design. Eventually I got married about a year later, moved on to South Africa, went to fashion school in South Africa, and I really believed I was going to be a fashion designer, quite frankly. But at the time, I'd say my side business had a side hustle. So while I saw the opportunity to sort of see you're a bride, if you come earlier to us, we could potentially create your wedding invitation. So that's where graphics design came into the picture for me. So I'd been doing that since 2014, I believe. And so when I went to fashion school and I'd shut down all of my business, graphics design remained. And I kept going with that. Even if I cannot create the actual dresses, I could make your wedding invites. But I think ultimately I went to fashion school and fell in love fully with graphics design. So there was a bit of a pivot. Once that was done, I recall just launching a graphics design business, turned that into a design agency, hired a bunch of folks. During the pandemic was actually such a business boom because everybody was home, businesses were starting. So yeah, it did take off pretty well rather. And it was in 2021, we moved out to the UK. And I was like, okay, I am in the design capital. What do I want to do with this? So eventually got a role as a senior brand designer at fintech. And from there worked on I led the rebrand of the company and began to understand that it just doesn't end there. I could see into the product and I was curious about that. So my work extended into product design. And eventually thanks to my manager at the time, I found something called growth product design. So it's a really long story, but that's sort of been my journey into finding myself where I am today.
Basically, I didn't really want to stay in the lab, and so I was looking at my options, and I actually came across a role that was a researcher position, but I didn't realize that the researcher wasn't actually R&D research. It was a researcher in terms of people research and finding people for roles. And so that kind of piqued my interest into an area that I hadn't really thought of before. And when I went to the interview and I learned a bit more, they had a life sciences division specifically in that consultancy company. And so I decided to join, and I would just kind of see how it went. And then lo and behold, kind of as most people do with recruitment, fell into it. And then I stayed in it because I was inspired by the commitment to improving patients' lives and being involved in kind of the wider business side of things. Being in touch with the more corporate side of life sciences is very interesting.
At first, right now, I'm a software engineer. I've been in this career for about like 6 years now. But I started my journey as a computer engineering, and I decided for this, course and at uni just because my mom told me. She was like, "Oh, computer is the future. Oh, this competition, IT." And I have no idea. I didn't know how to even develop program or anything like that. I had any of those skills. So all this process in the beginning was really hard because I never had coding, do the code in my life. So, but at that time I had so many professors, teachers. They were like, "Oh, don't give up, you can do it." And of course, I had to spend way more time than everyone else to learn everything. But that was totally worth it. I was surrounded by such good people that could always inspire myself. And that was the reason that as well I joined as a community organizer at that time at 4Pi Ladies, which is a global community that teaches and empowers women with Python. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, to be in a community, to have, and also give support to communities as KCL Women. And that it's such an amazing thing to have a community that can inspire and then can give support to other women, because it's not easy when we don't have a background or when we see our area that is male dominated. So I want to be the source of strength as well, and then be the one to give support and always give back the support that I received once.
I think I've been quite lucky in that I haven't had any horror stories. One thing I will say is that the deeper you get into the scientific field, you will notice that there's less women sitting on the table, and that becomes a constant reminder that there's still a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that people are making it to the upper bands, people are making it to the PI position, and so on and so forth. UCL and King's, I think, shed a lot of light on this, and they talk about how a lot of research scientists don't make it to certain bands. They always end up stagnating at band 6 or 7, I believe. And this is something that I'm starting to notice the further I get into the field, and something I hope to see change as we move along.
So I think coming from talent acquisition and recruitment, maybe there's not so many obstacles because I'm not so much a minority in that field. In HR, it's a female-dominated area. However, the obstacles that I had identified when I was at university was probably the lack of support and the work-life balance issues at university, whereby we were kind of introduced to the lab being kind of the be-all and end-all, and you have to be very passionate about the lab. And then also the lack of support aspect. When I was going into university, coming from a lower socioeconomic background, I was supported into university through kind of summer schools and looking at universities and that sort of thing. And I was very much supported into my application to go to university. But then when I got there didn't really seem to be any sort of support system. There was no initiatives, there was no sponsorship. There was a lack of support to try and encourage women to stay into the STEM field. So I think whilst I'm not really experiencing any obstacles now, and I'd like to think through the recruitment processes that we have with GSK and Korn Ferry, we don't really provide, there's no barriers for us. We're very, very inclusive. But I think when I was at university, I definitely felt that.
We need more women, basically, in more senior positions within design. I think that is very clear and obvious. And for me, when I began to work within the industry here in the UK, I recognized very quickly how tough it can be for a woman to access perhaps the same opportunities. And they're starting to get easier today, but then about 3-4 years ago, it was just a lot of no's and doors closing in your face. There's so much we can unpack there. But I think for me, it just began to, I realized very quickly that the representation I was perhaps hoping for was not as visible in the industry. And I began to look for just community is the way to describe it. And eventually I happened on a group called Product Design Ladies. And I was just so excited about the concept of it. It's just like a safe space. It's a WhatsApp group, but it functions truly as a safe space for female product designers across the UK and sometimes even internationally, to just be vulnerable and be seen. And like, it's that thing where it's like, when you do not share your experiences, you oftentimes think that it's only you who's going through it. And I think what became obvious when more and more women began to share in this space is how much we were all experiencing the same things, really. So I joined the management of the group, and it's just been very rewarding to be able to help create a continuously safe space for women to just be, really.
I can tell many projects related to the community awards for Pi Ladies. And of course they would see, oh, it's community led by women that is still studying, still in uni. What do they have to offer? And because they're just not just women, but they're also students. They don't have a lot of time in careers. And do we trust them? We always receive those kind of questions. But when we give them like our vision and our goals and see like we're not just here for the hype, we always, we organize, we have a plan, we have a structure, and we have those moments and we have to prove ourselves, of course. But I'm extremely proud to be in this position of, oh, I can prove myself, even though everyone else is against or maybe doubting. But that's the main thing.
My field is generally a male-dominated, especially engineering. A whole of STEM, but especially engineering, is a very male-dominated field. So already just by being in this field, I'm kind of challenging traditional norms.
Yep.
But one specific initiative I was part of was the Ada Lovelace Day in 2023, where I was invited as a speaker at the Ada Lovelace Day this is an event that celebrates the achievements of women in STEM. So Ada Lovelace was a historic figure herself who challenged traditional norms as a woman in science and technology.
Yeah.
So speaking at that event in her honor was incredibly meaningful. So during the event, I shared my experiences as a woman in biomedical engineering, discussed my work in 3D printing patient-specific implants, which is what I've been doing for the past few years. And yeah, being at the Ada Lovelace event opened new doors for me, because that event led me to be invited to more panel discussions about women in STEM and meet younger engineers and be a mentor to aspiring young women who want to go into STEM. So it really strengthened my commitment to foster an inclusive environment where women feel empowered to pursue a STEM career. So that was that initiative, Ada Lovelace, was a turning point in my career.
So I will go back to iGEM because I think it's a fantastic scheme, and if anyone who's listening to this would like to get involved, they should definitely. It really, really changed my career as I knew it. iGEM basically allows students to form a team. It's a completely student-led initiative. You raise your own money, you talk to stakeholders, you develop your own idea from the ground up. And that whole project definitely empowered myself and my colleagues who I still connect with today. They really taught us how to take on science in a way in which you didn't feel like you needed your hand to be held. You could do all of it by yourself, and you could always reach out for help, but you could do it for yourself. And having elements like that, opportunities like that really empower the scientists to explore everything that falls within the reach is fantastic. And oftentimes not something that you'll find in your degrees. You'll always have to stay within the curriculum. You can't do such creative things, whereas in iGEM you can pick a project about anything. Ours was very much taking muscle foot proteins from the ocean. So these mussels have these sticky proteins on their foot, and you can basically use those to create an adhesive. And it's just going beyond the scope of what we were usually taught, and I think I would recommend it 10 times on for anyone who'd ask. I found out about it really randomly at one of my inductions at King's. Someone came up to me and was like, you should try iGEM. And I didn't question it, and I just went to an induction there. A big part of my undergrad degree, I think, was decorated by me saying yes to a lot of things that I always suggested. Always say yes to the opportunities that you come across, and then you can start saying no a little later on. But went to this induction, found out about this program, and I worked on it for 2 years because it fell under COVID, which meant that we had to split our project into two because we weren't able to get into the lab the first year, but we were able to get reduced access to the lab the next year. Typically, it goes around 1 year to 6 months, but we managed to stay for 2 years, which was fantastic and a really, really pivotal moment for my career, I think.
Many times, many times. But a recent one, actually, I've been reading this book by Alison Fregal, who is a professor of organizational behavior. And the book is called Likeable Badass. Now, what I've realized is that I've historically either leaned into, by default, downplaying myself to be able to be perceived as warm and approachable, or then switching gears completely and leaning hard into being confident and forceful because that's the only way I know how to be, or that's the way women have to be. Like, you really have. It's not even just the assertiveness. It's like you've got to be forceful about it to be taken seriously. And I think that what this book helped me realize is that there is a way to balance both, which is why the title Likeable Badass does come from. And we can unpack, I have so many thoughts, and this is a whole conversation by itself. But that preface, I just say that to preface, like, in this scenario, I did have to advocate for myself with just following up on a miscommunication between myself and a senior leader at a role, which turned into feedback about both the work and myself. And that was how I realized, oh, there is a gap somewhere here, because the feedback that was coming across, like, you know, the statement around feedback is a gift. You can do with it what you want, but it is always treated as a gift, or you should treat it as a gift. But ultimately, I think in this scenario for me, as much as the feedback is a gift by default, in this scenario, it was quite clear, this is not the kind of feedback I should sit on at all. This is not the kind of feedback I should accept, because it was based on non-factual things and a perception that was just a misalignment in perception, basically. And it really bothered me, especially because I was new to this role, and I didn't have enough social capital, or at least I thought, to just walk up to this person and say, hey, let's have a chat about this. And, you know, it's what I said about the push and pull between either downplaying myself or leaning into like the forcefully confident one. And I knew in that instance, like, I was going to have to figure out a balance in between both. Now, I could have easily just resigned to not having enough social capital, but then I began to think about the future, which was, what do I want from a future interaction with this person? How would those interactions in turn affect my success within the organization, especially with them being a senior leader? So I chose to just think about future success as opposed to current discomfort. And for me, what I did a practical exercise, which was just sitting down and then actually taking a pen and paper and mapping out the different levels of interactions I could be having with them that would be how can I be beneficial to them, but also understanding that would also help me at some point, because let's be honest, that's what work is. And by doing that exercise, it did help me just be able to realize, for the sake of my future within the organization, I did have to step up and really just communicate with this person. And now that I had the conversation, thankfully, it did go great and we were able to course correct. But ultimately, I think for me, it also helped me remember this rule around for every negative interaction, there needs to be 5 types of positive interactions. And I think the concept of that is that negative interactions oftentimes last longer in the minds of people, that it takes 5 levels of positive things to sort of balance that out. And so if you put that into perspective, it was almost like a call to, you actually have to advocate for yourself and also build your self-trust that you can deal with uncomfortable scenarios, you can sit with that discomfort and get better at things. So yeah, that was one scenario of many.
I want to say that it's never really, I don't really have to assert my ideas just because I'm a woman, because I am very fortunate, and I understand that that's not the experience that everyone has, but I'm very fortunate to be in an environment where everyone is very inclusive. So in most meetings and academic discussions, I'm one of the few women, especially of my age. So sometimes that can feel very intimidating. I can feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I've always been treated with respect, and I've always had equal opportunities to express myself and share my ideas. The best way to just, fight the feeling, the intimidation that I feel inside me, no one actually makes me feel in any way. It's just to let your work speak for itself, and that's the best way to overcome the imposter syndrome, I guess, that some of us have. I think confidence is something that comes with time.
Yeah.
And of course, the more recognition you get, the more confident you are that what you are doing is worth it and it's impactful and is good enough. So it's very easy for me to say, just be confident and speak up. But I've been there, and it's very difficult to actually do that in practice. But I would say that if you start from little groups and you start by practicing kind of like sharing your thoughts and your ideas, if it's a one-to-one meeting or in a smaller group, like in your class, when you're not being judged or you're not being assessed, that's a good way to start. And then you can move once more things are at stake at a more important meeting or a conference or in an assessment during presentation. If you've practiced in a low stake environment, then you will feel more comfortable doing it when stakes are higher.
Not just on uni or just work, but outside of it, culturally, when you're talking to someone new or in your family, and when you meet someone, and then usually I'm this kind of person that I don't say my profession at the beginning. I want the person to know myself, like my characteristics, my personality, hobbies. And then usually in the end, I'm the one asking, oh, what do you think I do for work, do for living? And they usually say things related, to women-dominated jobs. And I was like, no, I don't do that. I didn't, I did computer engineering. They're always like, oh, you did that. You don't look like, because they always have like a stereotype as well for women engineering. We should have this personality. You should like this. You should like that. You should look like this. And usually if I come, I'm wearing, a dress, they was like, oh my gosh, you're a developer and you wear a dress. And so they have this kind of mentality. And even though I say, oh, I'm a developer, and then you start saying, but where do you work? And then you say, oh, I work for, in the past, something like, oh, Amazon. And then they're like, wow, like you must be intelligent. And then they still don't believe in, because they have the stereotype. And then you always have to bring your experience, bring like your curriculum to them to make them believe, because of the stereotype they have, image they have for what women in STEM should look like. And then you have to always prove yourself, and had many situations like that.
Okay, so it would be a recent pivot that has sort of helped me be to be in the space I currently am, which is growth design. And I recall it. Actually, I have to give credit to my manager at the time, who was able to just say, "Look, you are a thinking person. You spend too much time in your head. Let's put that to good use. There is this book." It started with a book. The book is called Data-Driven Design, or ultimately, I wanted more. Once I read, I was like, okay, I didn't realize this world existed, right? And ultimately led me to the growth designers community, led me into the course I was part of the first cohort of that course, and a whole new world opened up. But that was actually not the breakthrough. Well, that was the moment that sort of helped. Now, once this phase was over, obviously starting to work within it, and I just began to look at the markets to sort of gauge like an understanding, because what I realized very quickly about this niche is that it exists. It's been in existence in the US for such a long time, but on this side of the pond, it's not as well known. Well, now it has gained a lot of traction now, but at the time it was not as well known, and there were so few people. I searched for titles on LinkedIn, but then I also realized many people were doing that kind of work and just didn't know what it was called. They didn't realize it was called growth design. Ultimately, I made the call to sort of move on from that role when there was nothing on the market. And I think that was the breakthrough for me, which was that making the call to go from something that was comfortable to just putting casting the net out there and trying to see looking for an opportunity that will better enrich and help me grow and really develop quicker, and that's what I was looking for. So it was more like just betting on myself ahead of the market shift. And I think that was I really, in retrospect, I'm so grateful that I listened to myself and took that bet and took the leap, because I remember many people asking me like, oh, do you have another role lined up? And that was not the case. It was just that I could see the shift coming in the market and I wanted to be out there. So I'd say that, making that bet, one. And two, I then joined up with a friend, and we've been co-hosting what we call the Growth Design podcast. And just by doing that has exposed me so much to just different perspectives of different companies doing the same kind of work. And so I would say that breakthrough moment / achievement for me helped me really, really change the course of my career. And it's led me to where I am right now.
Interesting question. I might give you two. So in my career, I think when you do a PhD, or if you're in academic research, you'll find that the small wins are really the biggest wins. And over the past year or so, we've been struggling with our differentiation. So I'm working with ensuring that we can get motor neurons so that we can test out different drug candidates in ALS to see whether they have any curative potentials. And over the past year, we've been trying to optimize our model, and only recently have we gotten it to work. So that was a really, really big win, because it was a year and a half of constant trials and tribulations, and a very gloomy day in December. Everything started working, and it's the best feeling in the world, because thanks to that model working, it means that I can progress with my PhD forward and basically do everything that I plan to do. And alongside that, in the same vein, around the same week, I was nominated as Rising Star in Women in STEM in neuroscience, which was very exciting and I just didn't expect it. So I was really pleased to see that come through in my inbox and get to celebrate with all the fantastic women in neuroscience in Cambridge.
I was working as a front-end engineer at Amazon for almost 3 years now. And then there I was working on Prime Video app. And I was working directly with the interface especially for TV and game consoles. And then I was in many projects to build features to customers globally and millions of customers. But the most meaningful thing for me was able to do a feature, a new menu, and then able to call my mom and then say, Mom, can you open the TV? And she's there in Brazil, I'm here in London, and can you open the TV? Do you see that? I did that. So that's something that's so cool. Really proud. Of course, there's this huge impact globally, like millions of customers, but see your family and friends using something you worked on and spend time on it. It's really something that makes me proud, and it's really meaningful. And I always start to think, I'm building things and develop apps or whatever to my family as well. They are the users as well.
I was recently promoted to a recruitment account manager, which I think I'm particularly proud of, because it means that I am fully autonomous in the work that I do, in my diary, in my scheduling, and it's been a progression from the work that I have been doing. So I think that that's something that I'm particularly proud of. But I think a second highlight would be my apprenticeship that I'm doing. I'm doing a CIPD apprenticeship, a level 5 people management through the CIPD, and I think that this is something that I'm also very proud of, because I put a lot of effort into it, and I'm very proud of the results that have come out of that as well.
Yes, so definitely my most significant achievement was getting my technology, like my innovation of creating patient-specific rib implants, getting it approved to be used in clinic. And it has been used for over 20 people, like real patients that have walk around with my ribs. So it's really rewarding to see that I have made an impact on some people's lives. And that achievement was followed by me being named in Forbes 30 Under 30 which was definitely a very big recognition that validated the impact of my research and my ongoing work in 3D printing in surgery.
Yeah,
So,
congratulations. Yeah. When did you get this achievement? Like, when did this happen?
So I was included on the list of Forbes 30 under 30 in science and healthcare last year. So it was, I think, April 2024.
Yeah.
So that was after a couple of years after I completed my PhD. And actually, the president of Ada Lovelace nominated me for the Forbes list. So, as I said, Ada Lovelace was like the beginning of a lot of things for me.
The part with the rib implants, when were you able to complete that?
So that I started working on the technology during my undergraduate degree. It was the final year project of my biomedical engineering course. I developed the method that was in 2018. And then the method got approved during the first year of my PhD. So that was in 2019. And since then, during my PhD, I was still improving the method and collecting data from patients. And up to this day, I still make ribs for patients when they come to Guy's Hospital and they require rib reconstruction.
I think what I said earlier about being a mom, the one thing that oftentimes comes off of that is the guilt that comes with being present and the aspirations you have for yourself. And I don't know how many people feel this, but I know that mom guilt is a thing. And the minute I began to get comfortable with just knowing it's something I have to deal with, I have to take care of, it began to, my mind oftentimes, there's that acceptance first, okay, this is a thing. And from there, I begin to problem solve. And so for me, calendars, trade-offs, and compromise, that's the way I balance professional and personal life, right? First of all, calendars being everything goes into a Google Calendar, and I mean everything, professional, personal, everything, because there are also so many facets to, like I said, my professional life is not just work, it's also mentorship programs that I'm involved in. It's also extracurricular activities outside of work, attending events, networking. It's also it's also the podcast, basically, that I co-host. So there are so many layers to this. And then thinking about the personal, it's I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, a daughter. There's all of these facets to us, right? And so making sure that there is a centralized place. I have everything documented, and that's what works for me. I have call dad in my calendar. I have check-in with mom at 3 p.m. I have make a plan to buy tickets to go see a show with my daughter. All of these things literally have to go into the calendar as much. And I think it's that perspective for me where it's that everything has the same level of importance. And let me rephrase this and say everything has the same level of importance at the time of scheduling. Right. So and that's what helps me realize there's nothing too small to go into my calendar, because if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. Right. However, as depending on what it is, then that's what prompts the increase in levels of importance, basically. Right. So there are times that it's just the way life works. There are times that family time ultimately is the most important thing to me. Right. There is that, and as much as possible, nothing messes with it. But unfortunately, it's also life. There are moments where something professional sort of has to take precedent over that. And it's, once again, where those trade-offs and the compromise happens. Now, the lesson it's taught me has been to be humane with myself. As much as possible. One, there is absolutely no shame with the levels of ambition that I have as a person. And two, there is no shame with the levels of ambition I have as a mom. And three, which then goes into three, it is perfectly okay for me to figure out the help I need when I need it. There is absolutely no shame in getting help when it's needed. And help sometimes looks like I cannot seem to get out of certain meetings at work, which will run over pickup time. For example, I do have a partner who travels a lot for work. When he's away, what happens, right? There are scenarios where I will just have to make the call and say at work, I'm sorry, this is more important. I have to go pick up my daughter. And there are times when I'm able to get a babysitter that she's familiar with who would do that school run on my behalf. So it's calendars, trade-offs, and compromise as life happens. I place a serious importance on putting it into the calendar because, like I said, if it's not in the calendar, it does not exist to me. So unless it's something I can truly allow to slip through the cracks, then fine. Maybe we're not going to put it in the calendar and I can just wing it. If I remember it, that's great. If I don't, then that's fine. That's also fine. But just knowing that many times the things that do go in the calendar are the very important things, the things I place a premium on, then I get on with it, more or less. Like, yeah. And honestly, it's also that thing where it's like it sometimes takes 2 seconds to just put it in, right? I think where it gets hectic is if you're juggling multiple calendars like I am. Maybe it's like a schedule for my daughter, and then a work calendar on my personal and things like that. But then I put systems in place to help me, which is first thing in the morning, I do a quick run through and just see if there's anything that I need to move around. Is there new information with my family schedule that will interfere with the work schedule? Then can I prioritize that and just do that? And then in the middle of the day, has there been events? So like a 3 p.m. check-in, is there something that needs to change before pickup and things like that, communication. And then finally, before I go to bed, the last thing I do, I always have my trusty planner and my calendar. So it's more, I brain dump my next day's activities and my priorities and align them where they need to be. And from there, I then go back to my calendar and see if there's anything that needs to be moved around. And if there's anything that cannot be moved around, are there apology notes to quickly send through and just say, hey, I'm sorry, it's just not gonna work. So yeah, that's sort of how I balance things.
At first, I think throughout my career, I learned a lot that I need to know about myself first. Because when you think about, life and work and balance, we always think it's something like 50-50. But the truth is, your personal life is your life. Your life is more important than anything else. Your career, your studies. And we know, like, we have this pressure to have a career and then to earn money. But the truth is, your career should support your life. And then you should know what kind of life you want, the lifestyle you want, what hobbies you have, what you like, who are you outside work. And it's something like I tried, even for myself, to be like who I am outside career, work, studies. And it's something that help you like to stay grounded to yourself. And to limit like boundaries, because when you start just, I'm a software engineer, I'm everything related to work, and I don't have anything outside of that, you tend to be just work. And of course, you can love your work, love what you do, but if you don't set those boundaries, you start to forget who you are. And then you need to think your career is something that you follow you for the next 10, 20, 30 years in the future. So you need to think what I want to be doing 30 years, what I want my day-to-day look like. I want to wake up early. I want to have my 9-to-5 job. I want to be traveling. You need to start thinking and know who you are first. And spend time on yourself to know what you like, what you dislike, what your hobbies are, your talents, and that will help you to balance. My career is just something to support my life, and I know who I am outside work.
I think I'm probably, like lots of people, very guilty of this imbalance. It's something that I'm continuously balancing, and I think my extracurriculars are currently aligned with my professional aspirations. And just for example, the apprenticeship there, it means that I have lessons, I have assignments, I have projects that I'm juggling inside and outside of my current job role. But I also like to meet up with my friends and run and spend time with my family, go on holiday. And I think that the key is really to create boundaries, prioritize, and enjoy what you do, especially if it takes a lot of time. Put your do not disturb on. And I think if you seek professional progression, it's worth remembering that strong leaders practice what they preach, and they encourage boundaries, and they prioritize, and they delegate efficiently. So I would probably advise on those things.
I think a big thing about balance is prioritizing what you love. Whenever you start taking on different things alongside your career, you'll notice that time gets a lot more limited. But in order to manage all that time, you have to really stick to your boundaries and say, okay, this is the reason I'm doing this is because I like it. I therefore will try to make sure that I put some time aside for it, and defining that time aside that you're going to put in, whether it's 5 hours, 2 hours. I take a very systemic approach to it so that I can really make sure I'm putting time to all the bits and pieces that I love, because it doesn't take much from me because I actually enjoy doing it. But if I didn't enjoy doing it, or if something changes and I no longer enjoy doing it, I always make sure to say and reevaluate that maybe this is something that I shouldn't be doing anymore. And throughout my academic career, I've always had different extracurriculars around. So iGEM Nucleate, which supports, is a nonprofit organization supporting academic trainees who spin out. I've always tried to make sure I make time for them because I really value the ethoses that they're working on. And I really want to see that in my career as well.
Balancing a demanding career with personal life is very challenging.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget to do so, I'm going to be very honest. And I let my career and my just everyday tasks that I have to get done to take over and become a little overstressed. But, we're all human. So I think that's very, very normal. And anyone who says that they have the perfect balance, I think they're lying. That's a very idealized way of seeing things. But I can try to prioritize it, making time for myself and like relaxing and having a social life as well. I make an effort to do something outside of work and outside of my house 2-3 times a week, whether that's going for a long walk or a hike. I really enjoy being in nature. Or just like visiting a gallery, going to the theater, just to force myself to switch off my brain from work. Because when you're sitting at home, it's easy to just still pick up your laptop or your phone and just reply to an email. Whereas when you're out watching, going to the theater, you're forced to completely take some distance. But I think the most important thing that I've learned is that consecutive many hours of work don't necessarily make you more productive. And taking breaks and getting some distance from work, especially when it's a difficult challenge, will make you more productive in the end. And when something seems very overwhelming, the best thing that you can do is take a step back, put it aside for a few hours or a few days even. That's an example, it's something I had to do a few months back of something that really, really overwhelmed me and stressed me out. I took space from it for a whole week and then went back into it with fresh perspective, more rested. And that helped me tackle it with a fresh mindset, basically. Yeah, and I always had this rule, even when I was a student at university, that I don't do any work. That's actually a thing, late in the evening, even if I have an exam the day. When I had an exam the morning after, I close all books and finish all my work after a certain time in the evening. I can't tell you exactly what that is, and try to do something for myself after that time.
For me, I truly miss this kind of support, as we have in KCL Women's team. Of course, is mainly to the ladies and uni, but I miss that the companies they should have a program like this for the employees, and especially when it comes to empowering women for leadership roles. And I really miss that. I do believe that, our community and uni is really good, but I do miss the companies to invest that, to talk more about that, to have everyone involved, not just women, but everyone all should know about this, should know what are the challenges, what we need to do, what everyone can do to help and to engage other women to other positions as well, and especially for leadership roles.
So I think that whilst female role models are very, very valuable, I think the notion that women should only support and mentor other women is a bit outdated, and it's everybody's responsibility to try and fix an imbalance if there is an imbalance in your industry or field or company. I also think that you need to understand what are your conscious and unconscious biases, which I think is a real hot topic, and people are kind of saying that they understand it, but do they really understand it? There's the prove it again bias, where women are more likely to be remembered for their mistakes rather than their potential, whereas men are more likely to be remembered for their potential. And I think that's an example of an unconscious bias which needs to be identified and rectified. But I think just generally speaking, it's the more mentorship and sponsorship programs, the equal access to growth opportunities, and providing higher visibility projects to women.
I think that's a really good question. I think a really important element of ensuring that women are entering the fields that we ask them to enter is making sure that we have the right mentorship. We are providing them with the right opportunities to empower them to take on those roles. There's a lot that surrounds those roles in terms of soft skills, technical skills. It doesn't only focus on just knowing how to prepare or knowing how to do science. It also requires a lot of communication skills and so on and so forth. And if we don't provide them with those skills, it makes it even harder for them to get there. So empowering them on that front, like schemes like KCL Womxn, where you guys connect us with younger students to talk about our stories, talk about their worries. I think that's fantastic and something that I wish we had at every stage. And then also ensuring that there is an equal distribution of all these opportunities. If we're not having a selection bias towards certain genders or certain backgrounds, because at the end of the day, that's not going to benefit anyone. We have to always remind ourselves that interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary thoughts are the ones that make us move a lot faster.
I think that, and this will be a very bold statement to make, but really there is something where it's like design as an industry in general has a problem. And that problem is that there is mainly a certain group that is well represented. And for me, if looking to the future, I would hope that more and more people can be more intentional about making spaces for qualified and perhaps sometimes even more qualified people to women to gain access into the industry, or at least to just not just gain access into the industry, but also to grow within the industry and continue to take up spaces that traditionally they haven't been in. So I also recognize the climate we're in, and I recognize how increasingly difficult it seems like things will be in the coming years. But I think it is my hope that somehow through, even though the climate seems harsher by design, I'm hoping that more and more women, one, are willing to stick it out. And I use that very loosely because I am conscious of how many women typically quit because of how hard it feels or how hard it is to actually grow within STEM in general. So it's my hope that more women continue to do their possible best to get into the different industries within STEM, but also I hope that for women who are farther ahead, they can also begin to, I know they do a lot, but also do more, perhaps, to be a bit more conscious about it, and about creating more opportunities for more women to gain access into spaces that they typically aren't in. But the burden is not only on women, is also the most important thing. I'm hoping that we can see more men be more intentional as well about questioning perhaps the hidden biases they have regarding what abilities a woman has, because those still exist till today, right? And what women can do in general. And if there is someone who is qualified for that, then they should be able to get in. And there shouldn't be any presumption of, just because it's a woman there's that presumption that, oh, they must have gotten it because they were let in. No, it should be because they are qualified, and it should also be with an intentional mind that there is that effort to ensure that qualified women are just getting access just as much.
So I think in general, more female representation in leadership roles within STEM would be ideal. We do see more and more women, at least in the UK and like in my department. I know there's a very active effort of including more women, but it's going to take some time until we have women in leadership roles. And I think to achieve that, we need to maybe have more mentorship programs, such as the one that you have organized in KCL Womxn STEM, connecting young women with established female scientists and engineers and academics. And so have greater visibility of women who are leading research or startups or whatever it is that they're doing well at. And potentially increase funding maybe and support for women-led initiatives. So fortunately, I've seen many positive changes in this direction, especially in the UK, as I said, because that's where my experience is. But there's still a long way to go to achieve true gender equality in STEM.
My first advice would be definitely be surrounded by people and find a community. When we face a challenge or something hard, we tend to isolate ourselves and start to think, no, I can do it by myself. And the truth is, in this area, in this, especially in this male-dominated job that we were pursuing, it's really hard to be just by ourselves. We need to be surrounded by people, and don't be afraid to ask for help. We're here to help each other, and so be surrounded by people. Find a community is the best thing to do, and we are here to support each other.
So firstly, go and pursue the career that you want. Even if it's not common for a woman. And as you said, the UK is a very different environment. But as you said, in your home country, or I'm from Greece, and there are certain professions that are meant to be for men. But that's not the case. So go and pursue the career that you want. Go and study what you're interested in, and don't be intimidated by male-dominated spaces. Of course, easier said than done. But yeah, you need to remember that your ideas and contributions are just as valuable. What makes us good at what we do is not our gender, but is how hard we work and how much how much of a challenge we want, how ambitious we are. And then after you have kind of entered the world that you want to be in, just let your work speak for itself. So if you work hard and stay focused on your goal, even when challenges come, and that will happen no matter what field you're in, there's going to be a lot of obstacles well, not necessarily, but I know there were, for me at least, there were a lot of obstacles in my way. But just you need to be very persistent and show passion for your work, and that the persistence and your passion will help you overcome all the obstacles that you face and the challenges, and the results will come. It might take a while, so I think patience is key here. I went to study first in the US, then I left, took a gap year, came back here. So until I found my place in biomedical engineering at King's, there were a lot of difficulties in the way, but I never lost track of my goal. So I think, yeah, that's the key here. And also it helps a lot to find a strong support network, take mentors, colleagues, friends who encourage you and guide you, because it can be difficult sometimes to make decisions or just believe in yourself, and you need those people that know you and know your work and what you're worth to support you, especially during the difficult, challenging times. So try to stay confident that you are able to contribute to the progress that we want to see in women in STEM.
I will say, do not let it break you. Honestly, I think the most heartbreaking thing for me as a mentor is oftentimes talking with young women who have only just started to grow in their careers, and the roadblocks are already there. And roadblocks can happen in different ways, but many times the ones that oftentimes lead to women exiting are the ones that men aren't so conscious of. So just because it's already a system in a way that things work and the way it serves a certain demographic. So I think that when I speak with young women, it's oftentimes encountering these things, and they show up in many forms. Manager relationships are oftentimes a very, very crucial one. I will say that I've actually been very, very grateful and lucky and blessed that some of the best managers I've had are men. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I recognize that. But then that's why I said, like, the work isn't only with women, because there are also scenarios where it is women that are running other young women off the industry, right? So I think it's more just for young women, I would highly recommend finding a mentor, finding someone to talk to who understands the kinds of experiences that you might deal with or are dealing with, and just finding a way to persevere and figure out, like, also doing the work. Because as much as we are advocating that there should be access and there should be spaces to grow, there is also work that we women have to do, right? So in sessions, I oftentimes talk to young women about the blind spots that we also have. It's why I said, for example, in the scenario I gave, where I've oftentimes thought that you either have to be super downplayed to come across as warm, or you have to be forceful with your confidence. But there is a place for you to learn how to be comfortable as a woman with being. You're qualified, you're okay, you are in the space. How do you then ensure that you are taking up that space effectively and churning out the level of excellence that is expected of you, and sometimes even more?
This is always a tough one. It changes every single time. I think a big advice that I'd give is don't be afraid to overachieve. Just do what you want to do. Don't care what other people think. Don't care that you're stepping on certain boundaries that you put on yourself, or people have put on you, most importantly. And just strive to do what you want to do, prioritize yourself, and everything will make sense in the end.
I do believe that kind of life takes you where you're supposed to go. So I don't necessarily have any regrets for leaving STEM, but I think it's with that kind of piece of, particularly when faced with adversity, it's really about understanding what the adversity is. And I think the notion that if women go into STEM, they're going to face adversity may potentially be scaring women off of taking that step towards being in STEM. The adversity, if you break it down, harassment's not okay, stereotyping's not okay, toxic cultures are not okay, and in those instances, somebody in your organisation will be able to support you and help you. However, if you feel that the adversity is a lack of confidence or a lack of opportunity, I would probably say my advice is to step back, think about your network, think about who could be a mentor to you, think about who could maybe present these opportunities to you. And I think you have to kind of look rejection in the face and understand that if you get told no, it's fine, but kind of leverage your network to create opportunities and to create a support for yourself. Breaking it down to what the adversity is probably important, because not everyone will experience adversity. I hope they don't anyway. And if they do, understanding what type it is and whether it can be, whether it's a kind of a personal issue, which, you know, personal issues can still be supported, or whether it's something that's a bit more external, which maybe somebody else can help you with.
I feel like I've said quite a lot, and it is my hope that to anyone who is watching this, you continue to be inspired by the greatness that's within you, and you continue to be inspired by the greatness that is in other women around you, and as well as other men around you, just everyone around you. And we continue to take a learning posture, and just remember that learning really never stops. I finished my degree a long time ago, but I do not know how many courses I've taken since then, just to continue to grow my knowledge and grow my understanding of different technologies, different industries. And that's the only way to actually survive. If you're going to stay in STEM, you have to keep learning and keep growing.
I think what I would say is, if like a general call to action for anyone who's within the space and is a woman in STEM, to always give back to the community. I think that's really important. We all have to remember to be kind to each other, because we were all a couple steps, we are all a couple steps ahead of the next person, but we were exactly where you are right now, or where the new fresh undergrad is. We all have to remember that we all started in the same place, and we should all help each other get to where we want to be. And we go a lot quicker when we go together rather than alone.
I would say think about becoming a mentor. I wasn't a mentee. However, I wasn't aware of the platform of the program, and I think that with more mentors, it means that more mentees can be supported, and so it creates a larger community, and I think it's very needed.